Hi there, my name's Joanne Barlow. I work for Mott MacDonald, which is a multidisciplinary engineering, management and development consultancy. I'm a principal geomorphologist and I'm also the team leader for our Bristol Water Resources team. I've got a BSc in Geography and a Master's in Geographical Information Science from Nottingham University. They don't ask me to do any GIS now because it's one of those things that it's kind of a skill that you lose along the way if you don't use it enough. I'm a chartered water and environmental manager, chartered environmentalist and chartered scientist with CIWEM, and I'm aiming to apply for fellow status this year. I'm also the vice chair of CIWEM's Rivers and Coastal Group. I've been at Mott MacDonald for 5 years and I've got an expanding role at the moment, moving from a purely technical sort of geomorphology lead to managing a team of 12 people working on broader catchment management and nature-based solutions type of work. The main work I do involves developing sustainable solutions to river-related issues, river restoration, environmental impact assessment and design and mitigation for infrastructure, as well as water resources work. I started nearly 20 years ago now, which makes me feel a bit old, at the Environment Agency and their River Habitat Survey team, and I've worked for a number of different consultancies over the years. I'll briefly explain how I've been involved in some of the CIWEM branches and groups and how that's benefited my career. Initially, I was on the committee of the CIWEM North West and North Wales branch. That was quite a lot earlier in my career. I think I went along to a couple of events that they organised and then got speaking to the committee group and started helping off organising events. And I felt that that really broadened my network and exposed me to sort of different challenges and different topics in the wider industry. I then joined CIWEM's Rivers and Coastal Group Committee about 6 or 7 years ago, and I'm now the vice chair of the group. Being closely involved with CIWEM has given me a number of interesting opportunities, really. I've presented to visiting Chinese delegates who were on a tour to learn more about river water quality at CIWEM head office. I was lucky enough to travel to Florida for a Rivers and Coastal Group tour of coastal and water resource challenges with the US Army Corps of Engineers. And I also joined a roundtable meeting for DEFRA during their consultation for the 25-year environment plan. And recently I've got really involved over the last 6 months in the advisory group for this year's Flood and Coast Conference. So I'm really looking forward to that. I find being in CIWEM really helps me be much more aware of issues in the wider FSERM sector away from my day-to-day projects and job. And meeting a much wider group of people from different organisations and backgrounds really challenges me to think a bit differently about things. So have I had a career change? Actually not really. For me, I've had quite a defined path, though I have tried to take opportunities to do a few different things outside my comfort zone along the way. So yeah, no big changes for me. So when I first started out in my career, I think I wish I'd known a little bit more about how important broader professional skills around time management, communication, networking, and really importantly, critical thinking would be. And also, I suppose, in today's digital age as well, sort of computer and data skills, all these things being as important as some of the technical basis of your work when you're first starting out. I think another thing is it's important to have some kind of idea of a career plan or pathway that you can revisit and adapt as you move along and as different opportunities sort of come along and present themselves. Things will always change, but have an overview of what you want to achieve in your career and be able to drive action towards it rather than more simply doing what your employer wants or offers you to do is perhaps something I wish that I'd focused on a little bit more earlier in my career. What's helped me get to where I am in my career now? A few things. I think I consider myself to be very highly dedicated. I care about the projects that I contribute to and the tasks that I'm involved in, and really the difference that that can make. And it helps that I sort of work in an area where you feel that you can really contribute to sort of environment and society. Another one is really building strong relationships with the people that I've worked with, whether that's my managers, clients, colleagues, and a wider network, especially through my involvement with CIWEM. That sort of support and ability to work with an awful lot of different types of people is really important. And thirdly, I think trying different skills. So around 5 years into my career, I had been working very specifically on sort of river geomorphology projects and river habitats, and I sort of started to take on slightly different tasks around project management for delivery of flood alleviation schemes, from options appraisal, business case development, design, and through to site construction. So from that sort of adjacent but slightly different role, I learned a huge range of broader skills and really the ability to understand sort of wider decision-making processes about why things happened in the way that they did that I perhaps didn't understand as much before. There was a project which I was asked to contribute to actually at sort of quite short notice, and something that was a little bit outside of my day job as well. This was, I think it was in about sort of 2015, 2016. And the company I was working with were doing some work with the United States International Development Agency. And they were working on a programme of works over in the West Bank and Gaza. And this was looking at infrastructure development, so mostly roads, water supply and wastewater infrastructure. And one of their projects was actually looking at a desalination plant and modernising and expanding the treatment capacity of the plant. And that was mostly because the huge water supply problems in the area and ingress of saline water into groundwater boreholes and associated sort of health risks and impacts on the local communities. So I had to actually travel out to the West Bank on a couple of occasions, and my task really was to support the environmental impact assessment. And this was a really good opportunity because I literally had to work with environmental professionals, survey companies and engineers who were based out in Gaza and the West Bank, and also a team of technical experts in desalination treatment design who visited over from America. So it was a really, really challenging environment. I was focusing on the impacts on the brine discharge from the plant, on the sort of coastal environment around the outfall in the Mediterranean Sea. So learned a huge amount about sort of local ecology, sort of local social conditions, and really sort of how the team pulled together to be able to deliver an environmental impact assessment in an area where your ability to gather data and your data sources are so different compared to usual. So yeah, really challenging, but made some sort of lifelong colleague friendships and sort of really rewarding project to be involved in. My biggest career fail, I think I've been lucky enough not to really have anything that I think I had a large involvement with that's a total failure. But that really isn't to say that projects aren't hard work along the way. I've certainly felt disappointments, and a lot of those have been perhaps when trying to champion more nature-based approaches, but being too constrained by engineering design life or contractual design requirements. And maybe that's something we're starting to see a bit of a shift and change in the industry at the moment. One thing I wish in hindsight as well is perhaps that I've been more proactive and actively pursued the opportunity to work overseas in my career. So I think this sort of harks back to what I was saying about having a career plan and not being afraid to sort of direct yourself rather than being directed by others. So the most valuable lesson I've learned during my career, probably a couple really. I think the first one is that things can't always go smoothly or be perfect all the time, and just really not to take that to heart. I think in the past I've perhaps been quite hard on myself, got disappointed, taking things too personally or a bit negatively if things don't go to plan. It takes a bit of experience and courage to recognise really now that having a more positive attitude to adversity can help so much, and that balanced and constructive self-reflection, learning from where you could have done something better, but still being kind to yourself and moving on in a positive way is so important. I've also realised the to-do list at work is very rarely finished, so try to appreciate this, manage your workload effectively by trying to prioritise and learn to be able to say, sorry, no, or okay, but not until after I have done, if other people ask you to do something that's not a priority to you at the time. How has my approach to challenges changed during my career? I'd say there are always projects or tasks that you'll find really hard at the time, but usually with the right support, you can turn that around. I've been lucky enough not to really feel that I've had real big failures on projects, but I've definitely had and continue to have challenging projects where you can suddenly question your abilities. I think when this happens, it's important to be able to ask for support and to adopt a can-do and problem-solving attitude, and have honest conversations really about how to turn things around, and that's a skill in itself. Usually these challenges are a collective responsibility in some way, and rather than take a problem arising as a personal failure, to take a step back and try to see different perspectives and more positive paths to resolution of challenges as you go, is something which my approach to is definitely has changed and is still changing, and it's still something that I'm working on at the moment. My top 3 tips for early career professionals. I think firstly, develop a good network of people for advice and to talk to, in addition to your manager or immediate peers, and ideally outside your own company. And joining a CIWEM branch or CIWEM's early career network is a really good opportunity to do this. It will give you a good range of perspectives and just different people to speak to in different ways about different things. Secondly, I'd say don't be afraid to take opportunities to raise your profile and put yourself out there. People are typically impressed by enthusiasm and new ideas, and you don't expect to have to be right or have all the answers all the time. Thirdly, I think be curious and ask questions, be interested to learn new things and new skills, because they all collectively will be really useful to you. So CPD suggestions for early career professionals, I'd say it's quite a difficult thing to talk about because I think CPD is quite personal to individuals, but I'll try to give some thoughts. I suppose one thing that struck me recently is with the sort of increase in online availability of webinars, training courses and so forth, it's really positive because it can increase the availability of the range of CPD that you can do and how easily you can do it. But it can also be a bit overwhelming to try to find and focus on the best opportunities to spend what is essentially your valuable time. So a good idea for this is to try to have an annual plan for technical training or wider skills that are priority for you at the time, and a mix of types of CPD so that you can find content or styles of learning that suit you best. And really on-the-job learning can be massively underestimated in this because typically we're all learning every day through all the work that we do. Definitely listen to CIWEM or other webinars, engage in conversations about topics you're interested in, and after the pandemic, now that we can again, attend some local branch events and keep an eye out for those on the CIWEM events page. Within CIWEM Rivers and Coastal Group as well, specifically, just to big up the group here, we aim to run a study weekend each year, which is perhaps now moving towards a study day, particularly for the next year or two. And that's mainly targeted at those early in their career. We put on a mix of technical talks, site visits, and the chance to meet peers and more senior leaders in the industry. So keep an eye out for this. Advance Alert, that was planned to be in October this year in Leeds. I didn't have any formal mentoring for my CIWEM chartership. I did get advice from my line manager and from the North West and North Wales branch that I was involved in at the time. I've also had a little mentoring at work, but not anything that really is a sort of formal mentoring scheme, I suppose. I did join the Women in FSM group mentoring scheme, which is Women in STEM is a group which has sort of some connections with CIWEM. Some people are involved in both groups, and they typically run a group mentoring scheme and advertise that once a year. When I joined, we had one meeting in person before the COVID pandemic, and then we continued to check in with each other online or WhatsApp group and things like that. And our group topic was about improving personal resilience. And it really did help me to listen to all the different sort of personal and professional challenges that we all faced and how we felt about and tried to overcome them. So that was useful to me. And I definitely recommend looking into mentoring, as long as you have a good focus of what you'd like to achieve from that, and therefore sort of get a good match and a good plan to sort of work on and develop with a mentor.